At 0310 local time, a senior commander was briefed on a fast-moving tactical crisis as rival forces maneuvered for position near the contested border, where the first signs of escalation were already visible and the strategic stakes were rising by the hour. The confrontation centers on a narrow corridor that controls access to supply routes, airspace, and forward operating positions, making the opening phase of the standoff critical for both sides. According to defense officials, the commander entered the situation room with a clear mandate: assess enemy movements, confirm weapons readiness, and determine whether the current posture could hold without triggering a wider exchange. The immediate concern was not only troop placement, but also the range, speed, and survivability of the systems now in play. In practical terms, that means radar coverage, missile envelopes, electronic warfare coverage, and the ability to move forces before they are fixed in place. The first reports described armored vehicles shifting into concealed positions while air defense units expanded their coverage around key infrastructure sites. Military sources said the deployment included short-range interceptors, mobile launch platforms, and reconnaissance assets designed to detect incoming threats before they could reach command nodes. The opposing side, meanwhile, was believed to be testing the perimeter with drones and standoff surveillance, a pattern that has become common in modern hybrid conflict. Officials familiar with the briefing said the command team is focused on one question above all others: whether the current movement is a probe or the opening stage of a broader offensive. That distinction matters because it determines everything from rules of engagement to air tasking orders and reserve mobilization. A probe can be contained. A coordinated push can force a rapid response across multiple fronts. The geography adds another layer of pressure. The area is dense with roads, ridgelines, and hardened sites that can hide equipment from overhead surveillance while still allowing rapid repositioning. That terrain favors forces that can move quickly, communicate securely, and strike first with precision. It also punishes hesitation, because once a unit is detected, it becomes a target for artillery, loitering munitions, or air-delivered ordnance. Weapon specifications are central to the calculation. Interceptors with limited magazine depth can be overwhelmed by saturation attacks. Mobile launchers can relocate, but only if they are not pinned by persistent reconnaissance. Long-range strike systems offer reach, but they also expose supply chains and command links that must remain intact. Every decision now carries a tactical cost, and every minute on the clock narrows the margin for error. One defense analyst said the situation is being treated as a live test of readiness rather than a routine border incident. The side that controls the tempo controls the battlefield, the analyst said. If one force can force the other to react, it gains the initiative, and initiative is often more valuable than raw firepower. That assessment reflects a broader reality across current conflicts, where detection, mobility, and precision often matter as much as numbers. For now, the commander's immediate challenge is to confirm which units are positioned to defend, which can maneuver, and which are already exposed. The next phase will likely depend on whether the opposing force commits to a visible advance or stays in the shadows and keeps probing. Either way, the opening move has already changed the board. The confrontation escalated on the ground and in the air as both sides expanded their deployments, hardened their positions, and pushed additional assets into range of the disputed zone. Military planners now face a narrower margin for error, with each new movement increasing the risk of miscalculation, interception, or a rapid exchange that could spread beyond the original perimeter. According to officials briefed on the situation, the latest phase is defined by layered pressure rather than a single dramatic strike. Short-range air defenses, mobile launch platforms, and reconnaissance units are being repositioned to protect command sites and logistics corridors. At the same time, the opposing side is increasing drone activity and standoff surveillance, forcing defenders to divide attention across multiple threat axes. The tactical picture is becoming more difficult to manage because the systems involved are built to exploit speed, concealment, and saturation. Interceptor batteries with limited magazine depth can be drained by repeated waves of low-cost drones. Mobile launchers can survive only if they keep moving and avoid being fixed by persistent tracking. Once a unit is identified, it becomes vulnerable to artillery, loitering munitions, or air-delivered ordnance within minutes. That is why commanders are treating the current phase as a test of endurance as much as a test of firepower. The issue is not simply who has more weapons. It is who can sustain command and control, preserve radar coverage, and keep the kill chain intact under pressure. In modern conflict, a force that loses situational awareness can be forced into reactive mode, and reactive forces usually pay the higher price. The geography is making that problem worse. Road networks, ridgelines, and hardened positions give both sides places to hide, but they also create choke points that can be monitored and targeted. Terrain that offers cover for movement also limits options once a formation is detected. A convoy that looks protected on paper can become exposed in seconds if surveillance assets maintain continuous contact. Weapon specifications are now driving decisions at the operational level. Systems with limited range must be placed closer to the threat, which raises survivability risks. Longer-range systems offer more flexibility, but they depend on secure communications, reliable targeting data, and uninterrupted supply lines. If any one of those links is disrupted, the entire defensive architecture begins to lose effectiveness. One defense analyst described the situation as a race between detection and displacement. The side that can see first, move first, and shoot first usually controls the pace, the analyst said. But once both sides start probing at the same time, the battlefield becomes less predictable and far more dangerous. That assessment reflects a broader pattern in current conflicts, where electronic warfare, unmanned systems, and rapid repositioning often matter as much as raw numbers. The strategic implications extend beyond the immediate front. Neighboring states are watching closely for signs that the fighting could widen, disrupt air corridors, or threaten critical infrastructure. Any sustained escalation would also raise pressure on outside powers to clarify deterrence lines, support partners, or prepare for spillover. For now, the challenge is not only holding ground, but holding the line before the next move is made. At the height of the confrontation, both sides are now operating inside a compressed battle space where every move is being tracked, tested, and answered in real time. Command posts, mobile air defenses, and strike packages are all shifting at once, turning the front into a contest of speed, concealment, and timing. The immediate danger is no longer a single missile launch or one dramatic air raid. It is the accumulation of overlapping actions across multiple axes. Reconnaissance drones are pushing deeper to map radar activity, while defenders are trying to preserve launchers, protect command nodes, and keep communications alive long enough to coordinate a response. That is forcing both militaries into direct contact at the tactical level. Once a launcher is exposed, it can be targeted by artillery, loitering munitions, or air-delivered ordnance within minutes. Once a radar goes active, it risks being geolocated and suppressed. The result is a battlefield where every emission carries risk and every pause can be fatal. Weapons performance is now determining who can hold the initiative. Short-range interceptors can blunt a wave, but repeated drone salvos can drain magazines faster than they can be replenished. Mobile launch platforms can survive only if they keep moving. But movement also creates patterns, and patterns are what surveillance systems are built to find. The pressure is highest around the systems that protect everything else. Air defense crews are being forced to choose between keeping sensors lit and keeping themselves alive. That trade-off is brutal. A radar that stays silent may survive longer, but it also leaves gaps in coverage. A radar that turns on may help stop an incoming strike, but it also becomes a target. According to defense analysts monitoring the engagement, the fighting is now centered on who can break the other side's kill chain first. That means disrupting detection, degrading targeting, and forcing bad decisions under time pressure. In modern combat, the side that loses coordination does not just lose efficiency. It loses options. Geography is amplifying the danger. Roads, ridgelines, and hardened sites are being used as cover, but they also funnel movement into predictable corridors. Once those corridors are observed, they can be denied with precision fires or watched continuously until a target presents itself. Terrain that looks protective on a map can become a trap once surveillance assets lock in. The tactical picture is further complicated by electronic warfare. Jamming, spoofing, and signal disruption are making it harder to tell what is real and what is bait. A drone swarm can mask a strike package. A false omission can draw fire away from the real axis of advance. In this environment, even a small mistake can cascade into a larger loss. Military sources say the opposing side is also trying to force defenders to split their attention across too many threat vectors at once. That includes low-cost drones, standoff surveillance, and probe attacks designed to expose response times. The objective is not always immediate destruction. Sometimes it is to reveal where the defenses are weakest and when they are most vulnerable. The strategic stakes are rising with every exchange. Neighboring states are watching for signs that the fighting could spill beyond the current front, threaten air corridors, or put critical infrastructure at risk. Outside powers are also being forced to reassess deterrence thresholds and contingency planning. If the tempo continues, the next phase may be defined not by one decisive strike, but by which side can absorb the next blow without losing control of the battlefield. On Tuesday, defense officials said the immediate crisis on the front line had shifted from raw firepower to command and control recovery, as both sides worked to restore damaged air defense networks, rearm mobile launchers, and reestablish reliable radar coverage after days of constant pressure. The outcome now depends less on a single strike and more on which side can rebuild faster, protect its sensors, and keep launch crews alive long enough to matter. Military analysts tracking the engagement said the first measurable sign of de-escalation would be the return of disciplined movement under cover of darkness, shorter radar emissions, and fewer exposed launcher positions along known routes. That would not mean the threat has ended. It would mean commanders have concluded that survivability now outranks aggression, at least for the moment. A senior regional defense source said both forces have already learned the same lesson. Modern air defense is not won by static hardware, but by tempo, concealment, and replacement capacity. The side that can rotate systems, preserve trained crews, and deny the enemy clean targeting windows will dictate the next phase, the source said. If you lose the network, the individual launcher does not save you. That assessment is consistent with the broader strategic picture. Precision strike weapons, loitering munitions, and electronic warfare have pushed the conflict into a contest of endurance, not just range. Each radar activation still carries risk. Each launcher movement still leaves a trace. But each hour that a system survives also buys time for repairs, resupply, and a new firing solution. For neighboring states, the immediate concern is containment. Air corridors remain vulnerable, and critical infrastructure near the theater is still exposed to spillover if either side decides to widen the target set. Outside powers are watching for that exact moment, because once the fighting expands beyond the current engagement envelope, the political cost rises fast and the military options narrow. The most likely short-term result is not a decisive victory, but a temporary reset under heavy pressure. One side may claim it has suppressed enemy defenses. The other may claim it has preserved enough capability to continue. Both claims can be true at the same time. In modern combat, survival itself is a form of control. Defense specialists say that is why the end of this phase matters. It will show whether the battlefield is moving toward stabilization or simply pausing before the next exchange. If the current pattern holds, the conflict will be defined by attrition, adaptation, and the constant hunt for the next weak point. As one analyst put it, this is no longer about who fired first. It is about who can still fight after the first round of losses. That is the real strategic test now, and both sides know it.